Under the scorching heat of Temecula's relentless sun, Patrice Holman, a black woman and the city's long-serving police chief, simply wanted a quiet moment to herself. A small pocket of peace at her own community pool. Nothing more, nothing less. But to Dennis Whitlow, a newly moved-in resident, that peace wasn't hers to have. The moment he laid eyes on her, he made a snap decision. She didn't belong. And just like that, he ordered her to leave. What he didn't realize. She had lived there for nearly a decade. What he couldn't have known. The authority she carried wasn't just in her presence, but in the badge she had dedicated her life to. This isn't just a story. It's a confrontation of racism, a testament to resilience, and a stark reminder of the quiet but unshakable strength of a woman who refused to shrink in the face of ignorance. Welcome to the channel. Today we're diving deep into a heated encounter, one that reveals so much about power perception and the reality of being questioned in your own space. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because trust me, you won't want to miss more stories like this. Now let's get into it. A day off, or so she thought. At 52, Patrice Holman had spent over a decade serving as the chief of police for Temecula. But today, she wasn't wearing her uniform. No badge. No authority stitched into a crisp blue shirt. Just a woman looking for a breather in her own neighborhood. She had called this gated community home for 9 years. A peaceful middle-income neighborhood filled with families and retirees, a place where she knew nearly everyone by name. And the community pool. That was her sanctuary. After weeks of back-to-back meetings, political wrangling, and the non-stop grind of law enforcement, all she wanted was an afternoon of stillness. Dressed in a casual long-sleeved tee, black capri joggers, and her hair pulled back into a quick bun, Patrice grabbed a water bottle, slipped into her sandals, and made her way down the familiar path to the pool. She wasn't expecting trouble. But trouble was already watching her. The interrogation begins. The pool shimmered under the sun, half full with the usual weekend crowd. Kids laughing, a mother gently coaxing her toddler into floaties, retirees lounging with paperback novels in their hands. Patrice waved at Louise, the young college-aged lifeguard, who greeted her with an easy smile. "Good afternoon, Miss Holman." She returned the smile, took a seat near the shallow end, and let the warmth of the sun settle over her skin. She exhaled deeply, letting go of the stress of work, allowing herself to just be. Then came the footsteps, heavy, intentional, coming straight for her. When she opened her eyes, a tall white man in khaki shorts and a tucked-in polo stood looming over her chair. His arms crossed tightly over his chest. His gaze was sharp, filled with an unspoken accusation. "Excuse me," he said, his voice laced with false politeness. "Do you live here?" Patrice sat up slightly, blinking. "Yeah, I do." Her tone was even, unwavering. The man scoffed, shaking his head slightly. "Really? Because I've never seen you here before." He gestured toward the pool. "This is for residents only." Patrice studied him. She noticed the crisp, newly printed HOA pamphlet sticking out of his pocket, the way his skin hadn't yet been touched by the sun. "He's new here." "I live 3 houses down," she answered, keeping her voice calm. "Been here almost 10 years. Dennis let out a short, humorless laugh. "Right. And you just wandered in." Her jaw tightened, but she refused to let it show. "No," she said evenly. "I used the gate. Just like everyone else." Dennis stepped closer, his presence pressing down like a weight. "We've had issues with people sneaking in from outside," he said, his tone shifting into something more authoritative. "You'd understand why I have to say something." She tilted her head slightly, her gaze unwavering. "And what's your name?" A flicker of hesitation crossed his face. "Dennis. Dennis Whitlow. Just moved in last month." His chest puffed out slightly. "And I take the rules pretty seriously." She nodded slowly. "Well, Dennis, if you check the HOA directory, you'll find me listed." She held his gaze. Patrice Holman. But Dennis wasn't interested in facts. He wasn't backing down. "You don't have a key fob on you," he pointed out, his voice growing sharper. She barely blinked. It's in my bag. He didn't move. Neither did she. I'm going to call the HO aboard and report this, he threatened, as if the words would shake her. Patrice shrugged. You're welcome to. But Dennis still wasn't done. I just think it's strange, he continued, his voice tighter now. I've been here a whole month and I've never seen you once. You'd think we'd have run into each other by now. Patrice leaned back in her chair, unfazed. Or maybe, she said smoothly, you've just been looking in the wrong direction. That landed. Dennis scoffed, his face flushing. Look, you can make this easy, or we can call security. She didn't move. Dennis, I told you, I live here. His voice sharpened. I don't need attitude. Patrice's eyes locked onto his. And I don't need to be interrogated at my own pool. The reckoning. A voice cut through the air. You all right over there, Patrice? Dennis blinked, glancing around. People were watching. Patrice sat up straighter, her voice low but piercing. You saw a black woman sitting alone and decided something was off. You didn't ask. You accused. You didn't check. You assumed. Dennis opened his mouth, but no words came out. Florence, a longtime resident, called out from her lounge chair. Patrice, you want us to call Ken from the board? Before Dennis could process it, Patrice reached into her bag. Not for her fob. For her badge. The gold gleam caught the sunlight as she held it up. City of Temecula Chief of Police. Dennis stumbled back slightly. His face draining of color. You were saying something about rules? She asked, her voice calm. I didn't realize. Dennis stammered. You assumed, she said. And that assumption was loud. Dennis swallowed hard, his bravado gone. I'm sorry. She let the silence settle before speaking again. You could have had a conversation, she said. Instead you tried to check me. Like I was stealing time in a space I've helped keep safe for almost a decade. Dennis turned and walked away. And just like that, peace returned to the pool. The next morning, at the community bulletin board, a printout read, Know your neighbors. Below it, a photo of her in uniform. Someone had scribbled in pen.